What is up, everybody? Thanks for coming to hang out. It's been a while since we've done one of these. I actually don't know how many weeks, but we skipped the last one mostly because we were kind of working on this proposal as well as a few other things, and we figured it would make more sense to wait until we had something to talk about before doing a call. So, as you all saw, the proposal for the metamorphosis to Dinero went live on Monday. And I think voting is set to kick off today. I think we got majority positive feedback, so we're good to start voting. Funky, I don't know what the exact timeline looks like for that, but
Yeah. Well, basically after this call, if we don't get, we'll see kind of the feedback we get, and as you were saying, like general positive feedback on both like public and private channels. So yeah, I think we can launch the vote after this call, and it'll run for 3 days. So we'll end like midday, or this time on Monday.
Sweet. So hopefully now everybody understands why it kind of took us so long to put this thing together. I mean, ultimately we started the conversation about sort of like the future of our butterfly emissions a while ago, and we collected a ton of feedback along the way, which obviously helped shape this proposal. And I think we touched on pretty much all of the points that the majority of everybody brought up over the past several months, and I think we landed on something that's really strong. So we could spend really the first half of this call sort of going through the proposal, going through like what next steps kind of looks like after voting, assuming everything goes well. And if not, obviously we could come up with a plan for that. But yeah, so I guess any questions that people have, just kind of like ask them along the way as we're sort of making our way through the proposal, and we'll answer them to the best of our ability. So in case you missed it, here is the proposal, and we can kind of like give a little bit of a high level overview and maybe dive into all of the different points. So I'll start with just sort of a quick summary of what's going on. So the primary idea behind this proposal was spawned whenever we were sort of having some like internal discussions about the way in which our product suite was sort of scaling out. And we've had like a lot of feedback really over the past like year or so that things were starting to get really difficult for people to understand, which is a pretty like fair criticism. So, we've spent a lot of time sort of building products down the long tail of DeFi, and part of that strategic decision like ended up making stuff harder and harder to understand. Like people get hidden hand, or some people get hidden hand, but not everybody gets marionette, for example. And we decided like whenever we were going to start building out Dinero that we'd start focusing more on stuff that had a larger, more addressable audience, and stuff that was like easier for everybody to understand, and stuff that was easier to explain. Like, and that's part of the strategy behind, why Dinero is such a good direction for us. And we were building out this proposal, we thought like, okay, well, it probably makes sense that if Dinero is going to be the future of the project, then we should probably roll up sort of everything into Dinero. And so that's the first part of this proposal, is like coming up with how we're going to sort of execute that rebrand. And we can go into the details of what that's going to look like later. But also, as part of this rebrand, we started talking about tokenomics as a result of the discussions we've had around RL butterfly emissions. And we decided like if we're going to do a full rebrand, then that should also come with new tokenomics that are better suited towards that rebrand. And so the idea would be to switch from Butterfly to Dinero with new tokenomics, which we can also discuss in a bit. And then from there, as part of this rebrand, we will be sort of spinning out a hidden hand under its own communication channels. Same for Pirex, and all of the communications from our main distribution channels will be focused on Dinero itself. And then there's some other stuff that maybe we could touch on later that go into a little bit.
No new Discord. Okay. I think we'll keep it all in this Discord.
Yeah. So we've been getting a few questions about like what happens to the Discord, what happens to the site. I guess I can cover that stuff. So yeah, the Discord is staying the same. The only thing that will pretty much like go away per se is the current sort of redacted.finance landing page. So we'll essentially like deprecate that stuff over time, and most everything will be handled from the Dinero website, which we actually have a lot of cool shit planned for. I've already kind of leaked that we have a little bit of a new UI in the works. It's been ready for a while, but we wanted to kind of save it for this rebrand stuff in the event that the proposal went over well. So whenever we end up doing the proposal, and if it passes and we sort of like do the full rebrand, then we'll basically push the new UI live, and then we have something else in store that's pretty cool for the Dinero app that I think people will be kind of hyped about. So yeah, all of the assets and stuff that we have, like the Discord, etc., will stay the same. We'll just literally reskin them and rebrand them. The current Twitter will also be pivoted to Dinero focused. Hidden Hand will have its own Twitter. Pirex will not, but we can kind of talk about what's going to go on with the Pirex stuff in a little bit. The big thing, I guess, that's important to cover with regards to like spinning out these products is that they still will benefit the project, right? So like these aren't the benefits these products bring to the project are not going to go away. They're just not going to be communicated from the same channel anymore, if that makes sense. And if people have questions about it, we can dive into that later. That was a very rough summary of stuff. I don't know if Sammy, that was anything you wanted to like add to the top of that with regards to the proposal in general before we like dive deeper.
No,
Cool.
I was just looking to if maybe we can send people the Hidden Hand Twitter now.
Yeah, we can.
Maybe Figgy has it.
Yeah.
And yeah, also in general, I think like there's been really good feedback on the proposal so far. I don't know if we already put it up for voting or we're gonna do it after this call.
For this call, yeah.
Yeah. So if you guys want to go follow the Hidden Hand Twitter now, all the the revenue that we make from Hidden Hand, it'll stay the same. There's still going to be a team maintaining it. Like this team that you see on the call is maintaining it. We're going to keep on pushing new markets. We're going to have probably some new upgrades for it that we're thinking about, not really developing right now. And like how Hidden Hand exists right now, some of the money goes to the treasury, some of the money goes to RL. In the new case, like some of the money will go towards buybacks, and then some of the money will go to the treasury. Same split. And the same will be true for Pirex, although we're working through like Hidden Hand is very obvious. It'll just keep existing, and just for like people who are not on this call, like we're not going to prioritize it, or we're not going to shove it down people's throats as much, because like it makes good money and we don't need to spend marketing resources on it because it's for the more like advanced user. For Pyrex, talking with Llama, who is like obviously one of our close partners on PXCVX, figuring out what we want to do there. PX Butterfly obviously will cease to exist because there's Dinero token now, which is essentially PX Butterfly. And then what else do we have? PX GMX. We're talking with the GMX team to see what we want to do there. I know a lot of people like just don't like it, and also it's just been a headache now with like no ESGMX tokens and GMX constantly changing things. So we're gonna figure out what we want to do there with GMX, and then that would be sort of like the future of Pyrex. But in terms of like communications, if Hidden Hand and Pyrex live in the same bucket, where we're going to be shoving down PX ETH and Dinero down people's throats because we have a lot of like exciting things that we're working on for it. And in general, it's a lot easier to communicate the narrative of an LSD or stablecoin than it is to communicate a multi-market bribe platform and liquid wrapper for a liquid wrapper. So yeah, those products will still exist. They'll still make money. All the token holders will still see the benefits of those products existing and being maintained, just in the form of buybacks instead of straight distributions. But going forward, like it won't be as much of a focus here, but we'll still talk about them on the community calls and stuff.
Yeah, and the reason this sort of simplification is such a big deal, and I just posted these two little diagrams from the proposal that I think summarize everything really well. Over the past couple of years, as everything here at Redacted has evolved, it's become increasingly difficult to communicate what we do, right? Because we have I guess 3 products technically, but each of them have sub products, and then you could even count RL Butterfly as a product because compared to most tokenomic designs, like it's a little bit complex. And so the result of that has been that communicating this to a very wide audience has been very difficult. And the result of this proposal would be simplifying that dramatically. And you can even see that in the sort of Dinero diagram, how, we basically minimize the offering that we're pitching to people, making it way easier to understand. It's way easier to understand Dinero as this sort of like yield base plate for Ethereum, where it consists of a liquid staking token, a stable coin, and a transaction relayer, where Dinero is a relatively simple token that's in line with a lot of the tokenomics that people are already familiar with. It's a lot easier to communicate that than it is to communicate that we have Pirex, Dinero, Hidden Hand, and RO Butterfly, and then all of these subproducts underneath it. And so it basically lets us like open the top of funnel a lot wider. As for the tokenomics changes themselves, maybe Funky, you're probably the best one to kind of give the overview there if people have questions about it, we can kind of answer those.
So do you want to go through the tokenomics kind of
now? Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. I think as Colin was saying, the broader idea behind this is the focus wasn't necessarily on tokenomics. However, in an effort to simplify the brand and also kind of give us a chance to modify the tokenomics slightly in a way which kind of simplifies the kind of token user experience, also allows us to kind of construct the token in a way which allows third parties to kind of interact with it more easily, was I guess the idea behind the new token in conjunction with the rebrand. So with the kind of refocusing of the brand towards Dinero, it made logical sense for us to think about the tokenomics and look at a new governance token, which was focused on Dinero so that it was aligned with the brand. And the new token is not that different than the old token. When you look at things like emissions or token shares, those are exactly the same. The key changes are one, redenomination. So instead of having 650,000 tokens, we'll have 1.3 billion tokens. So one butterfly will be exchangeable for 2,000 Dinero. And this is kind of based on the feedback that we've heard that, a larger kind of token supply can be easier for new users to kind of gel with. So it's like an opportunity for us to do that. And then the second change, and the kind of key change here, is the way in which there's kind of enhanced governance token utility with Butterfly. As you all know, you would lock it for 16 weeks, and then you would be able to benefit from fortnightly rewards in the form of WETH and Butterfly, and you would get enhanced voting power. But this is kind of bulky, and we came in with this 2 years ago, where locked governance tokens were the meta, and this is something that we've kind of embraced, with our liquid lockers and such. But given the kind of significant changes in the market and consistent feedback that we received from users explaining, their gripes with the user experience, having to, relock on mainnet every 16 weeks, it's something that's quite easy to forget. Even, large users like Tetranode or even C2TP forget to relock their CVI.
Yeah, I was about to say too, and the fact that like PX Butterfly even needed to exist is like a sign that the UX was just like too much of a pain in the ass.
Exactly. And I think the biggest thing was like every 2 weeks you have to claim rewards, and it's not a very easy hands-off experience. And we have the power users here. These are the users we have in our Discord right now and in the chat right now. You guys are the early adopters, the power users. You guys are the ones who understand it really well and who know the product suite. But with these changes, we're aiming for bringing on the users who are not as adept or who don't have the time to read the docs or know exactly how the tokenomics work. So by changing from a locking mechanism where you have to be involved at least pretty frequently, unless you want to use a APH Butterfly, the idea behind like a stake token is that it's simple. You can stake, and then your Dinero auto compounds, and then you can unstake, and then it's very simple. It's very easy for people to incorporate, and also the simplicity, in addition to making it easier for users, also makes it easier for kind of integrations on mainnet, but also across chains and off chain as well. So like, for example, if this proposal goes through, we'll have a staking contract on mainnet, but it'd be very easy for us to add additional staking contracts on other chains as well. So, if the gas price goes up significantly as well, and we need to be, facilitating the access of stake tokens for users on like chains like, I don't know, Base or something, we can be there, and we can be there quite easily and quickly. So the key changes for the tokenomics side is really just to tweak the design to make it more accessible to users, enhance the user experience, simplify everything, and just make it more easier for people to understand how to use it. And I think, do you want to like end there? Or do you also want to discuss kind of another kind of point of discussion, which is like the treasury emissions to incentivize the governance token, which I guess is also a key point of discussion.
Yeah, I mean, we can pivot straight into that. Nobody has any questions so far, so we could just keep
Awesome. I just
running.
wanted a break of me monologuing, Yeah, okay, so let's say the last point is, so RL Butterfly, we can call it, started in June 2022, and as part of the V2 tokenomics proposal, it kind of budgeted 7% of the token supply to be used as incentives for the first year. And I think that was really useful, to reward, the early community members, the people who have been with us from the start, especially as we were like, building out the protocol, etc. And at the end of the first year, the community came together and voted in additional 7% of token supply to be distributed for the next year. And so for Dinero staking, what's proposed is that 3% of the total supply be used to kind of incentivize Dinero staking. And like the reason for the decrease is kind of pretty straightforward. We're kind of in a significantly different position than we were 2 years ago in terms of the protocol's growth and product suite. And secondly, the emissions kind of schedule is significantly reduced compared to the first 2 years. The way that the emissions were built was to front load the 10 years of emissions at the beginning. And with the high emissions in the first years, we're able to do things like, 7% of emissions to token holders. And if you look into the proposal, you can see an analysis of kind of how that has translated into, locking and how those lockers use the tokens. But I think the idea with the 3% is kind of tapering off from where we were at 7% to something which is more consistent with the emissions that we have at this point in time. But at the same time, looks towards the future at incentivizing, keeping tokens to incentivize current products, but also future products, which we're really excited about now, but also in the next few years.
Sweet. So that is the tokenomics overview, which I guess people have a pretty good grasp on. And I think like the big thing is like you guys, it's pretty easy to wrap your head around all of this stuff. I mean, you've been able to wrap your head around everything we do so far. And so all of these changes are more targeted towards the sort of next 10,000 users. Like we want to make sure that as many people as possible can not only understand what we're building with Dinero, but also can understand the tokenomic model. And if we can, push something through that is more in line with what they're familiar with, then we increase the odds of that. And also, like, Funky touched on this a little bit, but the current design of RL Butterfly has made it really hard for us to do pretty much anything that other tokens sort of have the flexibility to do, whether it's multi-chain, whether it's get listed on centralized exchanges, etc. I mean, the design is sick and it's good for the current community and everything, but it's very difficult to do anything else, which, makes it harder to target that next wave of people. So, I mean, that's pretty much the full overview of the proposal, and nobody brought up anything for us to discuss or walk through. So I'll kind of like leave it open for any other things that people up here want to talk about. Otherwise, we can kind of move on to some other topics and just kick off voting today. We good up here?
If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them. But I think, yeah, I mean, maybe let me go through some of the questions I got.
Yeah, sure.
How will the actual migration happen? So if you guys were around for the V1 to V2 transition, the redacted site most likely will just turn into a migrations page where you can take Butterfly V1, Butterfly V2, APX Butterfly, RL Butterfly, every every single Butterfly token and migrate it into the new token. Yes, and if you're in RL Butterfly, we will like have like lengthy enough documentation and also, one-liners and two-liners and stuff to know exactly what you should do, how to migrate. But like the plan right now is to not have you be stuck in RL while everyone migrates to Dinero. So that's not to worry. We are working on getting the migration out as soon as possible. Is the migration won't happen the day that the proposal passes, but if the migration takes whatever, auditors come back or we want to line a bunch of things up with the actual migration itself. If the migration does not happen before the RL cycle ends, which do you know the date of that, Funky?
Yeah, so the emissions for RL, well, the budgeted emissions for RL will end like mid-June. Yeah, we have like full contingencies set out in the proposal. What happens if we're ready before? What happens if we're ready after? So it's a continuation plan.
So all the RL lockers, like not to worry compared to if you're just holding the token liquid right now. RL won't be deprecated until the migration is actually available. And if you just locked your RL the day before we posted this on the forum, you can still lock RL now. It won't change the migration process for you.
Yeah, I was just about to say we did get a question of like somebody was asking if it was worth locking between now and the migration, and I would say yeah, like there's no reason not to lock because Sammy kind of answered this. Like all the RO Butterfly locks, if they happen to be live when the migration goes live, will be unlocked.
Okay, let me keep going through some of the stuff that I got to. Some people are upset. Some people got the impression that Hidden Hand is being like deprecated. I already went over this, but this is some people said the same about Pyrex and stuff. That is not the case with Hidden Hand. We have a ton of markets that we want to do still. I think we'll see what we want to do with Marionette and all these different things on Hidden Hand. And when it comes to Pyrex, PXCVX will remain to be a thing. Obviously, like PX Butterfly and PXGMX, the question is if they're actually like feasible. Like being in the vaults industry in general is like a tricky one, and one that's probably not like doesn't make as much sense for us to be in because the return is low. The yield strategy changes all the time. You have already just with this migration alone, half of the Pyrex products that we offer are like pointless now because APX Butterfly will cease to get yield, and same with PXGMX, right? So if we ever were to do another Pyrex token, I don't see, like, to be blunt, like we haven't talked about doing a new Pyrex token for like a long time, and this is why we're trying to figure out a way to like potentially like host PXCVX on the Llama site or something, just so we can focus only on PXCVX and PXETH because those are the winners, right? And like we're like the team has a belief that like we should double down on the winners, which is what we're doing with this proposal. And instead of like experimenting, just like cut the losses or cut the losers rather. Even though they made us good profit, cut them as in like, is it really worth the marketing resources, the dev resources, all these things we put into them to like make them a thing? Probably not. So I know it's unfortunate because everyone loves the Pyrex site. Maybe we'll just keep it up. Well, we're gonna have to keep it up for a long time to enable the redemptions of PXGMX and stuff like that. So yeah, hopefully that all makes sense. One of the issues with Spell was buybacks was people was front running the Merlin candles. Have you considered crazy thought, Mexican Barra, but have you ever considered that it was the Spell team itself that was front running those buys? This is the thing, right? It's actually hard to execute a very efficient buyback program, although the dynamics change a lot when you as the team and you as the community trust a third party like experienced trader to execute the buybacks. I'm not going to say we've had this conversation because we haven't, but like I think we'd probably like lean on a market maker to execute these like buybacks over time. And like look, the buybacks is something where we can constantly bring in more of the supply so that once the token is fully emitted, there's constantly butterfly like leaving and entering the system, and it's like a pretty sustainable flow instead of just minting it out of nowhere. But the goal here is not to like print god candles. Like, don't get us wrong. The goal here is to like constantly be buying back butterfly and having that support for it, or Dinero now, having that support for it over time, and not to like just come and be like, hey, we're gonna do a buyback today, and like everyone can front run it. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, it's definitely something we definitely thought about. But as you were saying, I think the Discord sent me is we have the wealth of experience that we can look at what others have done and avoid their mistakes.
I recall the team previously saying they weren't a fan of buybacks. What changed your mind? I wasn't a fan of buybacks because I always felt that token emissions schedules were just not optimally like set up, and I think that with a buyback program that's not executed to like the most like honest degree, I don't know any other way to like say it, that it often becomes like value extractive, right? Now, I think that like over time, I was actually the proponent of like saying that buybacks weren't like the best idea until I realized like certain dynamics that exist with tokens with which do the locking mechanism. So one, we are like bound without doing buybacks, we are like bound to this model of constantly having to like trade around revenue and not opening up room for like speculation or freedom. We have to have people lock into the system of like RL, which like really holds back retail. We're seeing like compared to like 2-3 years ago where like people really thought like DeFi was gonna kill Binance. There's a Obviously we're going back to the old days where centralized exchanges are king, and like look, like you can have whatever opinion you want on that in terms of like scaling Redacted or now Dinero. We have to play certain games, and we need to get the liquidity up for everyone. And the buyback model is just a more sustainable model for what we're trying to do here rather than constant inflation. So I think that, yes, buybacks have their issues, but if I was to compare the issues buybacks have compared with the RL model, I'd say like buybacks at the moment like is probably like the more sustainable approach.
Yeah, and I was gonna add on to that, and I think my mic's fixed now, but I don't think, and people might not believe this, but everybody on the team doesn't always like agree with each other all of the time, and we can also be convinced of each other's ideas. And so I think this is one of those things where like everyone had a different view on how to approach it. We got good feedback from everybody in the community, and then we saw this as like a direction that ended up actually making the most sense. So good logical discussions is how we arrived here.
Yeah, like another thing, like people, every single RL epoch would tell me would be like, man, like the tax implications of RL distributions are like not the cleanest for a lot of people in like a lot of different areas. And and that's just like like little things like this can get addressed like so easily with just like a slight change. And like sure, I'm not saying we're not going to run into like issues with the buyback model, but like there's this like implicit level of trust that like we all have to have, that like we're not going to be doing the spell buyback issue because they kind of ruined it for everyone. And I look at a lot of the other buyback programs and they seem to all be successes, right? But like generally people will like hang themselves up on the failures. And I prefer to like associate ourselves with the winners. So
I actually don't even know the context for this like spell buyback issue. What is the story here?
it's what you think it is. It's just like they were in the Discord saying we're gonna do a buyback today, and it's just like everyone just
Basically like sandwiching the buybacks?
yeah, and they were buying it back on chain, and it's just
They're running the price increase.
and they're
Yeah.
front running it. Yeah.
Gotcha. Von God has a question here about migrating the ETH butterfly pool to PX ETH Dinero. Could you give thoughts on that? You think it could help?
I think we will. The main liquidity pool, Bond God, for Dinero will be paired against ETH because it's better routing, right? So a lot of people swap USDC to Butterfly, or they swap Death to Butterfly, or they swap ETH to Butterfly, right? the amount of people holding ETH as like that base token or USDC or something as that base token to like trade Butterfly from is like considerably higher. And that reduces the hops that people have to trade when they swap between aggregators and dexes. If you were to go on Uniswap and swap PXETH to Butterfly right now, you would have to first sell PXETH to ETH and then ETH to Butterfly. And then the problem is if we paired against PXETH, people would be doing ETH to PXETH and then PXETH to Butterfly, and it wouldn't really bring much to the table. You know, the metric we do not necessarily care that much about with PXETH is volume, and we're not going to be like we're pretty well aware that like the only LP for the pool is going to be us because opportunities that'll exist with like Dinero and some other stuff we're planning with the Dinero token. So I think it makes more sense to pair against ETH just because like it'll be a much more efficient swap for everyone. It'll reduce the barriers to getting into the protocol and reduce slippage and hopping fees and stuff like that. But I think like I don't see why, like, correct me if I'm wrong here, Funky. Like I definitely see a world where we bring Dinero to like an L2 and let's pair against like PXE there or something.
Yeah, for sure. I think I mean I saw Bond God's extensive discussions in the Discord, and it was great to see people thinking outside the box of how we can, find higher uses of capital. I think at the moment, especially as well, is that as you're saying, Sammy, is that like because of the routing, you have to swap through the PXE ETH pool, and that also can put pay pressure. And I think it's not worth compromising the execution for like the Butterfly people who are buying, the governance token for like what is like 1,000 ETH right now. Like I think with the upcoming catalyst we have, like there's other ways we can improve the leverage of PXETH and the TVL as well. But yeah, I think L2s. Yeah, I think there's a lot of cool stuff we can do with L2s, and with the new governance token and the mechanism there, I think we'll have the shackles off.
Yeah, and I talked about this before as well, but like I think it's worth reiterating it now that like I think like this idea of like pairing against PXETH comes from like people pairing against like Steth, right? Or Veth or something, right? And like the truth is that like we don't want to be Steth, nor do we think we could compete with Steth, because Steth is like the solution that like 80% of people use, right? The mid-curve solution. It's Ethereum with yield, right? And then they want to do all these integrations and replace ETH on Ethereum with Steth. But then on both sides of the barbell, you have people who want just like a higher yield, more degenerate solution that we can offer to them without compromising on any safety or leverage risks. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have like institutions who need a more compliant or need a more sort of like scalable solution in terms of yield than what Steth offers, right? And that's where our edge is, and that's what we want to execute on. And look, I'm not saying we're going to put PXETH and replace it with ETH everywhere, like what Steth is doing. I think that's like a valuable mission, but I think by us focusing on like the extremes of the market, like there's like a world where we could probably be making like more in terms of fees and revenue and yield than what Steth offers. So like it's just a different solution. I'm never gonna go out and tell someone like, hey, you should launch your token and pair it against PXETH, because I know that's not what PXETH is doing, and like we're not a Lido competitor. We're sort of in our own lane, and like I know the edge we offer is like different than what Steth offers.
Yeah, Ark says go for the institutions, and I know Terrence is like jumping up and down in his room right now. Possible to explain? Go ahead, Terrence. If you're talking, you're muted, I think.
Push to talk.
There we
I'm
go.
not used to this power.
Look at
The
this
things
guy.
I want to say. Yeah, we're gonna do some very exciting institutional stuff, but don't want to jump the gun. Can't jump the gun.
Yeah,
but soon.
cool stuff in the works. FOMO says possible to explain a bit more about how the buybacks will function.
We'll be sure to like post like a forum post on how the migration will work, how the buybacks program will work. We want to still talk to some of the like a few different executors, like a few different executors that we trust, and get their takes on what we're thinking and make sure that all works. but like to be blunt, like the idea is to do buybacks. In terms of how it's actually executed, we have ideas, but we want to make sure that like we have like a group of people that we can like rely on to execute this without front running risk and all of these things, and that they like the idea and will do it for us. So when the time is right, we'll post that.
Yeah, we'll get it figured out. Yo, GM, regarding the mode secret weapon that was built, can you talk more about the other names in the pipeline for that? I don't think we can yet, but they are names that, or at least some of them are names that you would be familiar with. But yeah, there's only so much we can say, obviously, because we want to respect the partnerships that we built, and part of having those is like keeping stuff quiet before it's ready to go. But regarding the mode thing that we built, people have been asking about this a lot, and basically the ball is no longer in our court, so we've provided everything that we needed to provide to mode. They just recently did their token launch, as I know all of you are aware. So now that things are starting to slow down on that end, things for them, they can actually start to focus on getting this sort of solution live. And I think I know it'll be the first sort of test case for this thing we built, which I think is really cool. And I know Mode's ready to show like a lot of love for it. So
one thing I can confirm is that there's other L2s who have signed an agreement that we will do the same thing we're doing for Mode with them as well, and more than just one. So like like the last time we talked about this thing, we said that like we talked to other L2s and they like it, and we're gonna see if we can like extend the solution out to them. But what I can confirm is that there's like other L2s and L1s that have like signed it, and we're planning on like packaging it up as like another big rollout that we can do after the Dinero token comes out, on top of stuff we have planned around PXETH.
yeah, and I will say there are hints out there. If you look hard enough, you may find them. Ark, which part did you want him to repeat? Oh, okay, you repeated it. Cool. Any timelines from the mode end? I don't know. I can't really, speak for them, and I don't know exactly how their internal processes work. So, yeah, sooner rather than later, hopefully. But I know they're starting to put the pieces together. They're working on the UI, etc. So, hopefully soon. Let's see. Did I miss anything from earlier? Denny and Sipu not trustable. I couldn't imagine kick. LOL. Cool. Any other questions around stuff? Otherwise, we can kind of like wrap it up and then start the voting for the metamorphosis proposal. And then obviously, as voting is going on and as we go into sort of next week, we can come up with a bit of a timeline for everything. We don't have any exact dates right now, obviously, because the proposal hasn't passed yet. But once we feel good about like whether or not it's going to pass, we can come up with timelines for rolling out the migration and all of the other stuff associated with the rebrand. But we'll basically try to move as quickly as we can. I see Nurok typing. Any information you could share on sex listing? All we can say is that we are working on it, and also we could say that like obviously the migration makes sex listings far more likely and more possible.
We'll never be able to. Nurok will never be able to talk about sex listings before they happen because we're all under NDAs and stuff. So
yeah, we will literally get in trouble.
We'll never be allowed to talk about what we're doing there, unfortunately.
Yeah, all we can say is we're working on it. I see typing, so I'll keep waiting. Okay. I like sex. Not familiar with the idea. Fair, but how is it funded? Yeah,
it's there's a bunch of different ones, right? So like tier 3s are like we'll just follow the lead on like bigger exchanges, right? The bigger exchanges themselves will have to work with market makers and work with the exchanges themselves, and like obviously that there's listing fees and stuff that will have to come out of the treasury, and like this falls under the strategic asset committee in terms of like where we allocate resources, because it is strategically money well spent. Obviously we're not going to just like waste money on random exchanges that no one's ever heard about. So like we're happy to give more insight as you received a grant from PancakeSwap and are closer to Binance than any other listing, can't you try to list on Binance? Like, look, like we're talking with all the exchanges. We're talking with all the exchanges, but like I said, like we can't like say, yeah, guys, we're gonna list here and here, and this is the centralized exchange plan, and you know, these guys like us, these guys don't like us, and
Yeah.
blah blah blah. But like, I'm sure that, you know,
I also think that these listings don't work like everybody tends to kind of like think. That we don't have as much granular control over where we get listed and when and stuff like that as people may think. You know, it's never as simple as like, oh, you have a relationship with an exchange, you reach out and they just list you. It's pretty much never that simple. Sorry, Sammy, to cut you off. But...
yeah, there's like a million people we have to deal with and talk to the centralized exchange stakeholders and talk to our stakeholders. Hey, can you connect us with this person? Hey, can you back channel this person? And it's a big headache. And it's not as simple as like, hey, Binance, we will pay you money.
I wish.
Like that, we would pay Binance, but it's not that simple. And yeah, we got to play the games. And yeah, Binance Labs, the one that did give us the grant, does operate separately from Binance Research, which is the team that decides the listings also, just so that's clear.
Yeah, and that might sound like a political answer, but it's literally true. They keep those separations for like good reason. Any thoughts on? Oh, were you gonna say something, Sammy?
I was gonna say a funny joke about how like also all the listings teams from exchanges, they not allowed like a lot of them like don't hire men anymore because the men would go to conferences and the projects would hire women and send them to go deal with the listings people. Unfortunately, we're not in 2017 anymore. Otherwise, we would have already tried that one. But yeah, like now because of all these shenanigans that's happened with centralized exchanges, like, you know, it's a very like a lot of them are regulated, a lot more regulated than you would think. And you got to deal with lawyers, and you got to deal with the research team, you got to deal with the listings team, you got to deal with the executive team, you got to deal with the BD team, you got to deal with the marketing team. Everyone has to be all on the same page. And like we know, like we understand the game and we're gonna play it, but like I wish we could say more than that, but like that's just the blunt reality of it.
Yeah, Terrence said, can say that Binance is probably the hardest sex to list on at the moment. Yeah, that's true. And like they even did this like recent announcement where, you know, it's like the anti-FDV sort of movement. But even still, like once they publicize something like that, you can only imagine the amount of applications they receive that same day from teams that all feel like they fit that criteria. So it's not an easy game. Any thoughts on launching a points program for PXE? Yeah, I mean, I don't think that makes sense, mostly because the token's going to be live, and I think the points meta is on its last leg. So I think it would almost be in bad taste.
This was another question I got is, are we issuing new tokens? No, we're not issuing new tokens. Like, we're not increasing the total supply for this migration. And look, I'm not going to, like, if I was going to say, yes, we're doing a points program, then that means that, like, we're going to do a points program and we're going to airdrop people because we think that their deposits are more valued than your deposits, which is not the case. All deposits are the same.
Yeah, it would be in bad taste, I think. Like, it
Yeah,
would be hard to manage.
Like, I don't think we're in a place to do a points program that just, like, dilutes people and issues new tokens and airdrops and all this shit. Yeah.
Yeah, if you guys know anything about us, it's that we don't exactly spam tokens into the market like some people do. Any other questions as we approach the hour here? Let's just let the secret weapon loose. Yeah, I mean, we're working on it. Like once mode goes live, I think it'll be even easier to pitch because we'll have a sort of public example. Unrelated to Redacted, anyone from team open to creating an echo group? Is that the thing Kobe is working on? Like the Angel deal flow thing?
I think so. I haven't had the chance to try it. I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't looked at it either.
Yeah. I'll check it out, Norak. Maybe it sounds cool.
Yeah, Terrence, it's that Kobe thing that he's been working on.
We can create a Friend Tech Alpha group.
I still haven't made a FriendTech account either.
Me either. Well, I'm broke, so there's that word. Yeah, aren't we all? Yeah, I saw some speculation about retirement in the Discord recently, and none of us are close. So nobody's going anywhere. You're stuck with us. We're stuck with you for a long time, lads. Any final
Colton, the CTO, is close to retirement.
Yeah, maybe next month or something. Post ETF approval or post ETFs going live. I'm out of here, bro. I have $135 left. Yeah, same.
Ark loves telling us he's retired.
Ark's flexing on everybody.
Silo utilization for Dinero. Are you talking about Silo, the protocol?
I think so. I mean, I think that we could actually open that up into a broader question about like if we go live with Dinero under the new tokenomics, like that opens up way more opportunities for the token to actually be used throughout DeFi in general. So like, yeah, I mean, I could see that easily being something that happens. Like, it's pretty much impossible to use RO Butterfly in any way. So like, Dinero under the new tokenomics would be far more interesting. Bond God says, "Are you happy with the time swap pool's performance?" Funky says, "Yes." Cool. Well, it seems like we are good to go on questions. Unfortunately, I don't think we have a joke this week, unless Dave is in the crowd and wants to come up here and redeem himself. But otherwise, we can wrap this thing up, I think. One day we might have to make Figgy tell a joke.
No, remember we made Figgy tell a joke. It was horrible.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I do remember that. What will the stablecoin be called down at the native?
Terrence is on stage. We can make him say a joke.
Didn't Terrence say 2 jokes back-to-back calls?
Yeah, Terrence's are better than Dave's.
Dave says next time, so everybody remember that. We got one more question, though. What is the stablecoin going to be called? It'll be PXUSD, so we'll have PXE, PXUSD, and then Dinero, the token.
Oh yeah, we can make Robert Chang come up.
Yeah, where's Mr. Robert Chang?
Is he here?
I don't think he ever redeemed himself either. I don't see him. We have a lot of people that need to redeem themselves. That's for sure. So maybe we'll.
We got Hoffa in the crowd. Who else do we got?
Yeah, we got Hoffa. We got.
Okay,
Damn, everybody's bailing once we brought up the joke. Everybody started leaving the call.
No one wants to tell the joke. Okay, well,
that's crazy.
We'll do the joke next. We'll do the joke next time.
Yeah, all right. We'll have somebody ready to go for you guys. But anyways, thanks for hanging out. We made it the full hour, and I think we will kickstart the voting on the new proposal here shortly. So be on the lookout for that. We'll obviously we'll make an announcement, and please everybody make sure to show up and vote. So thanks for coming to hang out. See you all in a couple of weeks. Peace.